First of all, congratulations to all of you. This is quite an award that you're receiving, and you all are four outstanding, very active folk. But I want to know, what was it in your life that caused you to take action, to get up and say, I want to make a difference?
I remember the riots in Baltimore that occurred and were in the movie Hairspray. And the riot did occur in an amusement park. And my parents had, as dinner guests one night, two people who were arrested picketing the amusement park, and two John Birchers, one of whom later came out of the closet. And I remember sitting there listening to them having this intellectual discussion, and they were all passionate about their beliefs, and they all talked to each other and listened to each other, and I thought, but these are people who want to make this world a better place. And I thought, that's a great idea. And then watching parents and watching their friends, it became something that a direction that I needed to head towards.
Wow, yeah. And so did it started right then? I mean, at that moment?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow. You're way more profound than anybody I know. So, Hugh, what about you? I mean, what was it? I mean, what was the moment? Or was there a moment?
I don't think there was a moment. I think that it's a confluence of circumstances and the influences of others. My parents were obviously very involved in their faith community and were active, but I would always say that the most transformational moment of my life was my university experience, where the very motto of the university was pro humanitate, pro humanity, and it transformed my worldview, the way I thought about the world and the difference one could make in the world. So in terms of an experience, probably my university experience was the greatest.
Mm. Actually, I can't remember not thinking that way. I don't know why. I guess my mother died when I was 8, and so I spent a lot of time with relatives, and a grandmother that I always remember wrapping bandages that were with her circle, her church circle, that were going to Borneo or wherever she was sending them, and an aunt that I lived with who was part of Big Sister, and I don't ever remember any time really in my life that wasn't about trying to make things better for other people, however that might be. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't remember a particular moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then being a teacher just redefined it. My first school that I taught in was in Knoxville, and I had tried to get a job and couldn't get one, so when I got to Knoxville, the only opening they had was in a black high school. And being a reading teacher, I certainly didn't know how to teach reading. I was an English teacher. And I said, okay, I'd like to do that. And it only really just, I guess, redefined what I already thought, being with my students there.
Mm-hmm.
So it was great.
Yazan? Any defining moment?
Again, it's more like Hugh's answer and Karen's answer. I mean, I don't think there was one defining moment. Certainly, just like you, I was blessed to have extremely committed parents to giving, whether finances or they were gifted intellectually, they were gifted culturally, they were gifted socially, and they really always gave and gave. And then a lot of mentors in life besides my parents. I mean, I was a Boy Scout from 3rd grade until I finished medical school. And, a lot of things that they teach you in Boy Scout are really what we're trying to do here.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the principles, don't ever leave a place but better than when you came to it. Those are things, when they're drilled into you as a child and, as a youngster born to a Muslim family going to a Christian school in Damascus, which was quite common, having a really extremely good role model in many of the priests that were in the school, while they completely distanced themselves from trying to influence my religion, just focusing only on donating to me compassion and good guidance, while completely letting me be proud of my own religion within the Christian school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of those things just factored in over the entire upbringing of mine, and extremely principled parents. And so I just never, the conscious of me never accepted me having something, whatever it may be, and not sharing it. And I'm not really saying that to look better or not, but that's really the reality. If I have something and you don't, I'd like to share it with you. And I think, that's the culture that I hope we can all have more of.
It's in your heart.
I hope so. That's what I think.
But it always makes me wonder, what about people who don't give back? People who have the ability, who have the time, they have the education, they have the financial wherewithal, but they don't give back. Where's the disconnect? Why don't these people act in the way that we all have been taught?
So one, they may not be giving back in a visible way, but you don't always know what they're doing within their own confines. I can remember, calling people to volunteer for something, and they would say, Karen, what I really like to do is to help my neighbor, or somebody down the street, or somebody in my family, rather than helping in an organized way. So you really sometimes don't know, whether people are giving in some way that's not as visible. I've just found that to be the case sometimes.
I can't explain why people are like that, but someone has said that service is the great dividing line between the two groups of people, those who help and those who hinder, those who lift up and those who tear down, those who contribute and those who consume. And I think this is actually true, that there are a set of people, for whatever reason, that have chosen basically to pretty well focus on self and their own well-being, as opposed to looking beyond self to the well-being of others and to the broader community.
Do you think that has any... I'm sorry.
No, I agree, absolutely. I think, like Karen says, some people we just assume they're not giving, but they're giving in ways we don't know. But some people just don't know how to give. And I think, just like you and Karen, none of us can really take credit for whatever we do because we were given. That's why we give. I think that's a good part of it. But again, I know some of the best humanitarians that maybe are not publicized are people who were not necessarily given during their childhood. They probably had a very underprivileged childhood. And I think if you really look at the people who are more on the taking end, the general observation I make is, regardless of how happy you think they are, when you really get to know them a little more, what they're missing is basically irreplaceable. The gift of giving is extremely precious, to be able to give. And I always pray, God, please always let me be able to give and not make me need to receive. And you never know. When I came to the States, the first 6 months I stayed, as I was interviewing, I know my budget. I lived about 6 months on $5,000. So I did go through a short period of time where I endured, even though, thank God, I came from a relatively well-to-do family financially, but I did have that short phase of kind of feeling it not just for a day or two, timing your meals, going to all you can eat, all those things, So, but I don't think that just kind of reinforced some things. And I honestly think when I look at people who have so much, who can give so much and don't, the people I know, or I know a little close, I know they're not as content inside, and they probably never will be, because they're missing that gift of being able to give.
I think about some of my students that you would think, okay, what do they have to give? And I think being able to give is empowering. And I think of Tony Baselli. He had a program, I don't even know how long ago it was. I had the pleasure of going with the kids one time, and what he did at Christmas time, rather than give to the children, he took them to, maybe it was Kmart or Target, and they had X amount of money so that they could get a gift for those members of their family, because they did not have another way to do that. And I thought that was so cool, because I think being able to give, however that might be, is extremely empowering and is an equalizing force. If you're always being given to, in a way, and you don't have the joy and the pleasure of being able to give, or you think you don't, it's just empowering to be able to do that. It's maybe talking about giving in a different way, but I think it's important, and obviously there are lots of ways to give, that are not just money or time.
How do we drive that down? I mean, how do we drill that down to young people? I mean, all of you talk about your faith and that played an important part. And I think of, so many young people in this community who don't have that firm grounding and a sense of faith. How are we going to reach those young people? How are we going to help them become the humanitarians of tomorrow?
One of the principles that we need business people to champion, because at the end of the day, most people look up to success, and success usually is in real world. And I think one of the principles that we need to somehow propagate more is the principle of, if you want to call it, all boats rise with the rising tide. The principle of, sustainable success. Because I cannot succeed if I just take from you and continue to succeed. I have to give you, even in a pure business sense, I think if we can get people to start to realize, and I'm not sure how, that long-term success is based on give and take, then you can start to take it down to the charitable or the humanitarian aspect too, because that's really what humanity is. I mean, humanitarianism, I think, is realizing that at the end of the day, if I'm the only one happy amidst 100 unhappy people, it is going to affect me badly one way or another. So my own selfishness, if you want to call it that, should drive me to make the people around me a little happier or a little bit more endowed with some of what I have. I don't know what do you think of that?
None of you are stagnant people. You guys are always on the move. You're on the move with issues. You're on the move with looking at how we make this city better. How do we drive that down to the next generation? I mean, we've got so many things going on in this city, and yet, how do we get young people to understand that they want to be active and making a difference in this city, the same way the four of you have made a difference?
I think that we first have to look at the generational differences.
Woo.
No, we do, because generations X and Y have totally different mindsets than people in our age group, and we have to understand that the way that we approach these young adults is significantly different than how we approach our peers. And once we find the common thread, and I can tell you that Generation Y, these kids are primed to be part of the community. We have to frame things differently to make them feel comfortable, and we see this all the time. And if you look at volunteers at the hospital or volunteers at Beam or anywhere else, you just have to frame their habits to match their mindset. Again, they grew up with a different worldview than we did. They all grew up with computers and cell phones and everything else. And so we have to recognize that this is a group that's going to be about just-in-time management, and that when you ask them to do something, it's not something they're going to put on their calendar for 4 weeks from now, but it's something that you have to look at. And as managers and leaders, we have to change to match their needs, their habits.
I hear what you're saying, Saul, but as I look at, this whole incident of what's going on in South Florida or mid-Florida around Orlando with the Trayvon Martin situation, and people are talking about the hoodie, and we don't look at young people the way they look at themselves. And we look at them and we see one thing, and that's not necessarily what they're about at all.
That's exactly right.
How do we change? How do we change to start seeing who these young people really are? Karen, you work with young people all the time.
Getting back to what Saul was talking about, I think you just have to ask them. They need an opportunity, and you ask them, and you say, "I'll come pick you up." And I mean, and kids do amazing things for other people, but they have to be asked. I don't think it's about anything other than that, than providing an opportunity where they can have fun and find out the joy of helping other people. And there are, I don't know, Back to School with Beam that we do. There are just kids everywhere. I mean, all sorts of kids. It's just very exciting, and I think it's just an opportunity they have to be asked. And, you know, talking about seeing kids, I'm not sure, Madeline, tell me would you ask that question again?
Yeah,
that you were talking,
you know
because
what?
that was a little different from what Saul was talking about.
Right now, I took it a little out of context maybe, but you know, we see young people and they dress a certain way and they look a certain way, and we make assumptions about whether they're involved or they're not involved. How do we take this whole issue of diversity and inclusion to include young people who, you know, don't look the way we might have looked when we were their age, or don't look the way, say, your children or my children look, but we want them to be a part of this big change that we want to happen in our community? How do we include them? How do we make sure that they're part of this as well?
I mean, again,
without judging.
Yeah, Madeline, I just think you ask them. I mean, you have to have, you know, something there for that in which they can volunteer, whatever it may be, or part of their community, whether they're helping clean it up or all the different community efforts. And I don't know, I just don't find too many kids that turn away. You know, when you go to the kids and you have something meaningful for them to do, and sometimes they're shy about it, they don't think maybe that they're wanted. And styles are different. I don't know. Hugh, what do you think about that? You've worked with kids also.
I think there are two questions. One is our own issues in relating to young people that perhaps are different from us. And so there, the beginning point is self-awareness. Because until you're aware of the fact that you have those sort of biases, you really can't address them. The question of how one engages young people, where they have a value of service and involvement, I think is a tougher question, because the very question you ask us to begin with is, you know, what influenced you? And it really was people and experiences. And so obviously, if that's the case, we need to be part of the people who model community involvement, who get involved with the lives of young people. And so I have great respect for those people who do mentoring and tutoring, you know, in a sustainable way, and not just in and out. So our own commitment in that regard certainly would make a difference, because you really are trying to build a value, and sometimes that value is not going to be built elsewhere. So, but you're not going to reach out if you are blocked by your own biases, whether it be appearance or just your own perception. So once we get past that, then I think it's showing example, but it's also being willing to get involved. The people I admire most are those people who over and over and over again do mentoring, do volunteer work with youth in the community, who coach, who tutor, and you know, there are people doing that every day. And I would argue, Madeline, those are the true humanitarians, those people who are in the nitty-gritty every day, oftentimes one-on-one. We have mentors in my own organization that have been doing this with young people for 12 and 15 years, quietly, with no fanfare, and they influence those young people.
And you might also, though, Madeline, be talking about the kids who are not part of that, Hugh. There are the kids that are hanging out on the corner, you know, that you see by the convenience store over in the neighborhoods, whatever, and they're not engaged. And certainly getting those kids it's a much tougher situation, you know, to find someone who can connect with them, I think, and make that person feel valued and included.
But I know you guys over at Baptist, you all had a mentoring program, and you bring kids in from neighborhoods all around the city
Sure,
to come in. And it seems to be working.
So, you know, how did we get in touch with those kids? How do our mentors connect? And that's through a particular organization in the city. I'll be glad to say it's the Bridge. But those kind of organizations are very much hurting for resources. So now you've raised a whole nother question.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going to have those organizations be successful to engage those young people so that they get into a system where they can have a mentor, then we've got to do a much better job of supporting those organizations, whether it be after-school activities, whether it be organizations such as the Bridge, because, to say the least, they're resource depleted, and every year they struggle with cutbacks from public sources, et cetera. And we really got to fulfill our social responsibility to support those organizations. And then once we get people connected to those organizations, then we can jump in and be one-on-one.
Yeah.
And I think we need more of the partnerships of businesses with our schools, you know, all of our schools, and more than one business partner, you know, for the businesses, because we have a lot of fabulous businesses that are engaged, but there are also many that are not, that maybe have not even thought about how it would actually enhance their workforce and productivity, I think, if the businesses or practices, whatever it is, engage with our schools.
This concept of social responsibility for businesses is a place that I want to jump in, because I think I don't fully grasp the significance of that concept, but I really believe that businesses should pursue efforts that toward fulfilling their social responsibility. Now, what I mean by that is the work they do outside the walls of their own organization in the community. And that means contributing financially, but it also means giving the opportunity for their own staff to get involved. And I don't think everyone equally shares that sense of community social responsibility on the part of the business community. And we have got to step up and do that better.
I mean, that would just be
Absolutely.
transformational. It would be huge.
Uzan's the newest one of us to Jacksonville, and it reminds me that there are so many new companies, and every time you turn around and see the Business Journal or the paper, the name of a company that we may not have seen before or heard of before, you find out they have 100 employees or 150 employees, and there are new things and new people to Jacksonville, and Uzan jumped in with both feet, and we need to get these new companies to do the same.
But to be honest with you, I mean, even the point that Hugh makes is a very good one, because yes, maybe I think about it, and we have in our company now, in our practice, 140 employees. Really, each and every one of them, I would say, from the lowest to the highest in the hierarchy, of the utmost humanitarian quality. But thinking back, maybe I jumped in with some activity, but I think about it, and all of them, when they were given an opportunity to participate in any charitable or situation where they donate time with support of the practice, none of them said no. It's just thinking in retrospect, we could have probably done a lot more than what we have done. I mean, probably in the last 2 years, asked them to participate in a couple of things, one of them for a foundation for a healthcare issue, one of them for a dialogue-based festival for the Turkish Amity, Turkish Cultural Center, and they just, they came with an overwhelming, the few that came with an overwhelming support. They didn't mind spending all Saturday, and regardless of whether the business was going to pay them or not. One time we did, one time we did not. But thinking back, those type of ventures really don't cost the business too much money. I do think they're extremely uplifting. They create also a sense of camaraderie between the business leader and the employees to a common good that, in retrospect, I regret now that I'm hearing this. We could have done a lot more, even in our own little business, So, but we just, the problem is we don't get to think of it. We're all so busy. So by the time you get a call, you're jumping in with your feet first, and then you have your other responsibilities. And I think it's just something that is not getting enough focus, even from us that we're claiming to be good at this, and God knows if we are or not. But I think those kind of discussions are very needed, and maybe even from a civic leadership all the way down to re-energize us to the fact that it's really extremely rewarding, no matter how you cut it, and it's not expensive.
You just think of the schools and what a difference it would make for the schools and the kids in the schools. I think to have
A business partner.
A business partner, and perhaps more than one. I would
absolutely.
think some of the schools are quite large, and they would definitely, you can do it by grade, whatever it would be. But I think it would make an enormous difference for the kids that we're talking about.
Well, tell me, what would you like to see this city do around issues of diversity and inclusion and getting everyone to understand and appreciate our differences and applaud those differences?
Well, I mean, I think me being present here with you today is an example that Jacksonville is, I think, at least a few steps ahead of many other cities.
Really? Now, I was just talking to someone and they said that they thought Jacksonville was years behind other cities when it came to issues of inclusiveness.
I don't know. I'm a glass half full type of guy, generally speaking. I actually, I have to say, I probably, on face value, on first look, don't fulfill, the stereotype of what you would think of a Muslim or an Arab American or whatever. But so I have personally never really witnessed or sensed any discrimination. But putting that aside, I really think Jacksonville is extremely unique. I mean, there was a study in the JBJ, I think like 6 months ago, maybe a little earlier than that, that kind of looked at the makeup of the city. It's an extremely diverse city. It is much more diverse than I even realized. And as a physician, we see patients, so we know the makeup. I mean, we see the East European immigrants who still don't speak English from all ages, and we see those who are second generation here, and we see the African American and the Haitian and the Latino and the white, and we see them all. And I think we have more of an economic. We probably have more economic divides than we actually have any other ethnic or religious or other divide. I mean, our practice has 13 satellites, and we see patients from all economic strata in the different locations of town. And regardless of what the patient who lives in a particular area has for a skin color or religion, they kind of tend to have the same common denominator personality or attributes. And so I think we sometimes also can be guilty of emphasizing too much. Just because we have a couple of bigots out there, we end up kind of getting sucked into emphasizing too much the color difference or religious difference or whatever difference. Whereas in reality, I really think we're moving more and more into an economic strata difference. And I don't know if anybody agrees with that or not. I mean, no question about it, there is the other differences and there is the other stereotypes. They're part and parcel of the social illness that most societies have, some more than others. But like I say, when I see my patient in a particular neighborhood, whether he's white or black or whether he speaks little English or excellent English, born here or not born here, they tend to have the same nice attitude. And so I don't know if anybody said, do you agree with that? Or?
Very much so. In addition to the economic divide that you talk about, I think that there's an education divide too.
Absolutely.
And I think those two go hand in hand.
Absolutely. And probably the latter is even more important. Absolutely.
I agree with you, Saul. The difference is an economic difference because, our city is an amazing city in terms of all the people that you talked about, but I think the big difference is the economic difference, and then therefore the education, healthcare hue that can follow, then the economic difference and opportunities that one might not have.
Well, I'd probably take a little different tack on this. I don't think one's being pessimistic or negative about our community when you say there are issues, and issues that perhaps cause us to be behind other communities of our size in the country when it comes to inclusiveness. And so I think one has to be realistic, and I think to do otherwise would be not not honest to ourselves. I mean, there are major racial divides in this community. There's certainly economic gaps. We've witnessed in the last couple of years bias related to religious persuasion. So I think that one can still be positive and optimistic, but one needs to acknowledge that we do have a long way to go in being a more inclusive community. I mean, that really is the wonderful work of OneJax, is to promote understanding and respect, and that's obviously where it begins. And we all need to be a part of that work, as well as the work that is certainly being carried on by many others. Everything occurs on an individual level. What are we doing personally? And then what occurs collectively as a society, and being willing to take stands when stands need to be taken, when there is evidence of divides and gaps that prevent everyone from enjoying the quality of life that most of us enjoy.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
it's okay.
you talk about that, and I'm going to just turn that a little bit and talk about housing, because it's been an issue, and we have OneJax, which has just done such a wonderful job. I don't even remember how many homes have been built in the last 20 years, but it's remarkable. And other cities have, in addition to their habitat, they also have programs where they have neighborhoods, and the city will condemn areas or neighborhoods and allow people to move into those homes and to rehab them. And the requirement typically is that they have to rehab it, spend a minimum of, depending on the city, between $50,000 and $70,000 or $100,000, and then it has to be their primary residence. They have to live there for minimum 2 years. They have to rehab within 2 years and then live there for 2 years. And those end up being communities that end up having a wonderful mix. And you talk about dealing with racial issues that are present. That takes care often of the lower socioeconomic and lower education groups, and helps bring them together and helps bring them up. You talk about rising tide lifting all boats. It's a perfect example. In the 2 years, they can sell. Usually those neighborhoods are well thought of and move up as time goes on. Other cities have been doing that, for a decade or more, and it's certainly something we haven't tried here yet, but something we might consider.
Obviously, my particular perspective is that as a community, at some point we have to decide, are we going to invest to really change things structurally and in a societal way? And one of the things that concerns me, while recognizing the struggles certainly with government funding, but if you compare us across with other cities, we invest, particularly in the social service side, pretty minimally compared to other major cities. Healthcare is probably one of the best examples, and I'm obviously always very concerned about the issue of access to healthcare, which is a huge problem in our community. There's another county in the state, and with that chose to add a tax to their base and put $80 million toward access to care. Well, that can make a whole lot of difference.
Yeah.
And pick your particular subject. We're going to get the results that we invest appropriately in. Until we decide to invest, however we choose to do that, in the private sector or society as a whole, then we are going to not make the kind of progress that I think we ought to be about. I think ours is a wonderful community, but I do want to say, people are not able to enjoy this wonderful community in the way my family has, because of the kind of gaps that we've talked about. And I just really believe we have at some point got to step up and make the investment in order to really change that. And we've not been willing to do that at the level I think that we need to. And I think I'm speaking for the business community. While there's great generosity, and we can all name those organizations that have been incredibly philanthropic in terms of investment in children, youth issues, etc., we can do better.
Yeah.
We can always do better, absolutely. I mean, when I said the half glass full, absolutely, this is not to acknowledge that there's problems. I think from a OneJax perspective, I remember a project that I think was sponsored by OneJax probably about 3 years ago, and my nephew and his friends, classmates, they competed with other classmates to create a video. I don't know if you remember that project. And I think their video ranked number 3 with their teacher about that shows diversity and how diversity works. And so there was videos from kids in high school, mid school, and then actually, believe it or not, from primary school. 1 through 6, K through 6, and those type of projects, I think it would be tremendous, because when you talk about how to fix the problem, this is not physics and math education. This is this type of diversity education that I don't think you're going to find a curriculum for. The only way to move it forward will be through projects that are sponsored by entities like OneJax, and that are funded by, obviously it's going to be the business community because the government does not have money now, but that really challenge the kids. When you talk about challenging the kids, I think the kids will give you the answer, and you get them involved. I don't think projects like that are extremely expensive. Arts and essay contests, for example, promote those type of things, or the project I'm talking about was simply a 5-minute video shoot. And those kids, I mean, they really did tremendous. There was, a Muslim kid, a Jew kid, and a Christian kid, and they just showed at their 4th grade level what they really thought of, of stereotyping in an extremely simple-minded, straight-to-the-heart way. And then you had, again, the 11th and 12th graders showing it a little bit higher level, while playing basketball and doing whatever, how they really are, they don't care about all those stereotypes me and you are talking about. And there was a couple winners. I forgot it was a small prize, but nonetheless, kids worked very hard to get that prize. And I didn't see that project come again the following year, and I think these are the things that we should probably challenge OneJax to really do in a tri-county way. And I bet you if we create such a project, I bet you, I'll be the first to run knock on doors to get funding for it. Because I think this is where it has to start.
You heard that song, right? You heard it, right?
I think this is where it has to start. The adults, they take a little longer time to change their mentality of things. And they get there with education and with meeting neighbors and realizing. But I think when we really, when we really get to the kids as they are forming the seeds of those stereotypes, then we can really, a change of 1 degree or 2 degrees in their path at 4 years, at 10 years old, makes a huge difference. At 30, you have to make a 20-degree change in path to get there.
Dolores Weaver asked me the question a few years ago: when do kids learn to hate? When do they start to hate? And I couldn't answer her question, and certainly statistics and research vary dramatically on that. But part of the issue was, is this next generation, because of the way they're raised, are we going to find them more tolerant and respectful and more integrated than the generations that came before? Is that something that you all see?
I know. One of the things that, I don't know, what Hugh was talking about and the economic difference in the way our children are raised and the opportunities, I do see that economic difference, that widening, and the education. So what does that have to do with diversity and acceptance? And I don't know that I know the answer to that, Saul. It's one thing to talk about kids who have the opportunities. I mean, there are programs, CISV, whatever, that are doing what you're talking about for kids, but not all kids get to participate in those. Mm-hmm. You've got the kids that are growing up in a housing project where, I see it at the beach where we have the public housing project. We have a center. The center in the summer, the kids have to pay a certain amount of money in order to participate in summer camp. A few get scholarships. The rest are over here in the housing project doing nothing all summer. So all ages. So how does diversity even become a part of their life or their thoughts or whatever? Is it an issue? I would say it's probably not something they think. And they think about, unless a parent, is particularly has thoughts of hatred for whomever it may be, which could be. So we're talking about opportunity in a sense for our children. Not all kids have that opportunity. There are grave differences today that he was talking about within our city. And I think we have an amazing city in terms of its volunteerism and giving, but we also have a whole pocket of kids and families that there are not those chances. I mean, I look at like the families that are served, if you take Healthy Start, and our babies and our moms, you were talking about social services, and I see the kids, and then I see some of those same kids at the other end of the juvenile justice system, and that they're the ones who are going into the jails. It's just that the education has failed them. There maybe have been opportunities, maybe they haven't taken a chance or the opportunity, but there are these differences, and how diversity fits into that, I don't know. I don't know when there are other issues that may seem way bigger.
It might take a second grade or third grade importance in the mind of someone who has really got a much more immediate concern, and I see that. I mean, I think all the issues we're talking about are issues that will probably, I don't think there is a 10-year plan, and that for those type of issues you're going to have a 10-year plan, which means you have to have institutions like OneJax and similar, and you have to have committed business or community leaders that are willing to support, and see no results for 4 years, and then know that at year 5 we'll start to see glimpses of some, and then hopefully at year 10. But these are, tough commitments, and but I think the issues we're talking about need that kind of long term. These are not issues that will be solved in a overnight or a summer or 1 year or 2 year, and I don't know how to. I don't have the reach to go to the people who can really support something 10 years.
Now, all of you have been committed for years.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a one-time thing. So how do you get others to make that commitment for the long term? Not the instant, not the quick fix, but over time.
I think Karen hit on it earlier. Ask.
Right.
Ask.
I do think.
Yeah.
I
ask.
do think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just you just ask, and these are just. I mean, the families and the children or men that you maybe think you're serving. If you ask them to become part of those who are doing the serving, they're thrilled. But you do need opportunities. But getting back to what Hugh had said, I mean, we don't have those same opportunities around our city. We don't. We have differences, and I know there are always going to be economic differences, but we don't provide some of those opportunities.
Jacksonville is still a 2-phone call town.
Two-phone call town?
Yeah. If you don't know the person to get something done, you know the person who knows the person.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's still that way, and I've had greatest success picking up the phone and calling somebody and saying, "I need your help," or "Would you be part of this?"
Mm-hmm. And they'll probably tell you yes.
Well, that's it. I know you've done it because you've called me, and so.
And I call you.
And you call me. That's right. So I think that it's incumbent on us to continue to make those phone calls and to try to get people to be the best they can be. Glass half full. Yazan's now on my list.
Look for that call, Yazan.
There's something really cool in Atlantic Beach. They have a dig project.
Dig.
It's a Donner Garden, and it's over on West Atlantic Beach. Well, for a minimal amount each month, you can grow your own little garden in this community space. And what is so cool about it is that people from all over Atlantic Beach have a garden. It's
Ah.
not
Yeah.
just one particular part of town. I mean, perhaps the original concept was to help the families in our Donner Park area, but that's not necessarily how it's worked out. And it's just so neat. And a group of young people started this,
Wow.
not adults. They raised the money and are the ones who are over there participating and getting the families, teaching them how to grow things. But the people with the gardens are all over the city of Atlantic Beach. I think that's just very neat. It is, an opportunity to break down walls of not knowing who your neighbors might be, even though they may not be the neighbor right next door to you.
Wow.
So
That maybe we can just have gardens all over the city.
Yeah,
and
we do
that'll
have a
bring
lot of
people
gardens, actually.
together and have them growing vegetables. Well, as we think about how you've influenced others and influenced folks to take an action, what words of wisdom do you want to leave with our city? What do you want to tell folks out there? And as you great humanitarians, what do you have to say?
If you're talking to great humanitarians, you don't need to look at me. You talk to these people here. But I think it's, first of all, it's very humbling to be called that, because I don't think, I speak for myself, I don't think I am. I think I just really try to do what I can. If you see something broken, you try to fix it within the means you have. But I think it would be tremendous if somehow you can relay to your other brothers and sisters in humanity who have just who have been blessed with just as much as you have been blessed with, the real self-fulfillment that comes with being able to give and with actually giving, no matter what it is you're giving. I think if somehow you could get that, there will be plenty more people, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who are already donating a lot more than anybody on this table, that are just choosing to be quiet about it. And I'm pretty sure not only in Islam, I'm pretty sure in every religion there is, you're encouraged not to talk about your givings because you in a way lose some of the credit in the eyes of the Creator. But sometimes we are also told that there are settings where sometimes it's good to talk about giving, so that you encourage others to give. And obviously there needs to be a fine line, or there is a fine line. But I think, and I'm not sure, I'm still relatively new in Jacksonville, 10 years now. It is my home. I'm not going anywhere. I think there needs to be more of a business community consortium that really starts to focus on specific projects. And they don't need to be all about diversity. We have a lot of other issues in the city, just like Karen alluded and like you alluded to. And we're not going to solve all the problems, but I think when more people who have some means get together, then the abilities become multiplied 100 times. And so if there is a way, or if there is such a venture that is really non-political, that is really all for the common good, along the lines of diversity, along the lines of creating a better future for those kids, so that they become better citizens in 10 years, sign me up.
Okay. Saul's going to call you, so you don't have to worry.
I think my answer to your question would be, we have really got to continue to promote a sense of community stewardship, community trusteeship, where we really, by our actions, create for others a sense of responsibility for the broader community. It really is believing that this community is that which we've been entrusted with. Mm-hmm. And we have a song we sing in our church, because we have been given much, we too must give. And so that's where it begins, is that understanding. Now, how you instill that is a whole nother matter. But what I would say, your question was, what would you say to people, is you really have to use your influence in that concept of trusteeship, whatever that influence is. And for some people, that's going to mean individual involvement. And I have just incredible respect. I would come back to the point, the real humanitarians are those people who day in, week in, and week out are working one-on-one with kids, with youth. But on the other hand, some of us, because of what we've been given and the fortune we've had, can influence things at a higher level, at an organizational level, and can promote the social responsibility of our businesses in the community. So I would say to people, do what you can do with the role you have, with what you have, with the energy and skill sets you have, to make a difference in this concept of community trusteeship.
I call it the Miss Celeste syndrome, the lady on the front porch.
Yeah.
Teaches the kids to read.
Right. I agree. I mean, I really think that each person has this ability, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, I think the ability to impact is at different levels, as Hugh said, depending upon your business, organization, or just maybe you don't have a business and you're not employed and you're in your community. But I think that each person, the empowerment of the individual is what is so important. And giving people the opportunity to choose, giving people the opportunity to be listened to, the opportunity to be the listener. I know these sound like simple things. I guess this is the school teacher, but I think that those are the things that make the humanity in the person. They give a person a sense of substance, I guess, and pride, and from that person might be empowered then to touch the next person. And just the relationship that you have with each individual whom you meet, and the effect you can have on that person, positive or negative. And I think that is what makes a real difference. I think about something as a teacher. I guess this was a professor at one time, and they said if everybody started out the day with a little white piece of paper and you had it pinned on the front of you, and as you go through the day, as comments or people whom you meet, you can lose pieces of your paper, so that by the end of the day you just have a little piece left here. So are you someone who is, are you losing some of your piece of paper? Are you helping someone else lose part of theirs by the way you engage with that person? And I think it's this lifting up of all of our community that is so important. And then that, in a sense, is what impacts the diversity. It's valuing people in some way and making them believe that they can do things and having opportunity, and through these different ways that we're talking about.
Madeline, can I jump in?
You can. You can come on in.
What do you want to tell the community?
Yeah, what do you want?
And I have one more thing.
Okay.
And that is the importance of collaboration. If there's anything that disturbs me, even in the not-for-profit community, is when we revert to sort of competition and protective kind of behavior rather than collaborate. I'm very proud of the healthcare community and the collaboration that we have done and around several key issues, including the access to care issue, and we certainly could do more.
Right.
But I think that it is sort of the 1 + 1 = 3, the synergy of organizations and people coming together. And if there's a message that we've got to continue to reinforce with each other is, we aren't in this alone. We can do this together in a collaborative fashion, and we're going to have a whole lot more impact collaboratively.
In fact, that's the only way we can really do it, is together.
I love that garden idea. I mean, I keep thinking of that,
Well, it was just so neat when as I said, I knew some of the families over in the Donner Park area, and I thought, okay, this is great. And then someone who lives down the street from Saul is like, Karen, I have a garden over there. And I'm like, this is fabulous.
Well, and take that thematically to cultivation. That is really what we all ought to be about, is cultivating this sense of community stewardship with people. And so while we're growing our garden, we can be also growing people who genuinely act upon their sense of responsibility for the community.
And as I said, it's young people who did this, not adults in our community.
So wanted to say something.
Well,
You look like it.
what's been so remarkable to me is watching the vast number of volunteers we have in the city.
It's huge.
It's remarkable, and to go glass half full, these are people who are working and volunteering so many hours a day and not getting any atta girls or any credit, but they're the ones holding everything together. And if we can let the rest of the community know about these incredible volunteers we have in Jacksonville and what they do for our children and for other parts of the community, maybe a story on TV or something online will get another person to volunteer. And we get critical mass. Not only does it come from the business community, it's got to come from somebody saying, I can do that. This is my passion. I want to do that as well.
I have to tell a story from my own organization, and that's why I claim those people, those volunteers, are the real heroes. And if there's a problem with awards, it is that we award people that, for whatever reason, they're
More visible.
we get attention that is not there. But this past year, I just happen to remember this vividly, where someone was recognized, and someone, a nurse in my own organization, who every week volunteered to clean the houses of seniors. And as it was explained how many hours she put forth. And this came out of an experience out of her own family, where she just really discovered the need and made a commitment. And we were told how many years she's been going to do this quietly, and her coworkers were saying, we didn't know you did this.
That's so neat.
I mean, she's the true humanitarian.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the examples are abound, honestly. I'll tell you, I mean, in my own practice, I'll give you an example of how we sometimes get sucked into the so-called big picture and we forget the little common picture. I mean, in my own practice, one of our employees, a nice lady, got afflicted with breast cancer, surgery, complications. And, we're busy. She works in a place where I don't see her. And one day, one of the ladies has been with us 10 years, super humanitarian. She's always out for people, comes to me and says, Marilyn, she's, Dr. Eve, I just want you to know you don't have to pay anything, but, so-and-so has been sick, has been out of work, and I have been taking her food every day. I have already given her such and such money, and I've grabbed a little money from the employees to pay her. So if you want, and I'm like, Marilyn, you have done this for 6 weeks. You approached all the employees, and now you're coming to me? I mean, is this insane? Of course. I mean, and so humanitarians are all over. I mean, they're all around us. Just like, we had, the We Care program, for example. That is, I think, a tremendous achievement for Jacksonville.
Essentially volunteer.
Yes.
Essentially volunteered. The Islamic Center was super proud, and I'm very proud of what they did. They did participate with a free clinic. And then at the end of the year, we're very happy. They saw 600 encounters or whatever, planning for 1,000 next year. And then just in talking with Dr. Nussbaum, I understand that one of the cardiologists at Chance with his wife just started a clinic around the same time and had actually seen just the two of them, just about the same number of patients. And, so I was talking to, the gentleman who had been shown and said, you know what, congratulations, but no congratulations. I mean, here is your challenge. If 2 people could see that much, you have 30 doctors. You got to be able to more than double. What are you talking about? So those kind of, when you hear what other people are doing, then you suddenly realize that, yes, I'm contributing, but I sure could do a lot more.
I could do
That's a
more.
great example of community collaboration.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of individual physicians, obviously hospitals, others in the healthcare delivery community that have come together on a shoestring of a budget.
Yeah.
But because of the collaborative energy, are making a difference. And I think,
30,000 lives.
and by the way, there are others. There's no doubt.
Volunteers in medicine.
Those are the kind of things that where you really have great impact. Quite frankly, leveraging very small resources.
One point I'd like to touch on, and I don't know how pertinent it is to the discussion, but I think if you really are hopeful to achieve a widespread impact, you cannot disregard, again, in the sense of being realistic, like you said, you cannot disregard the impact and the importance of engaging the responsible media in town. Because certainly for every act of good faith, there is plenty of acts of not so good faith from a little bit less responsible media sometimes. And I mean, where we're sitting now is a place that we certainly need to find a way to, we have plenty of responsible media in town that we probably need to find a way to also incorporate it into this collaborative, because otherwise you're not going to reach to any significant mass, I don't think.
I'd have to step in to say that I'm very, very proud and thankful for the University of North Florida's collaboration with OneJax, another recent example, which I really believe can take the OneJax organization even to a higher level in concert with the university and serving as an ethical and moral compass for the community to promote understanding, respect, and again, anytime organizations come together and are mutually supportive of each other, and that's the most recent one that affects the organization that we're about in this event.
Right. And then they have exposure to all of those students on that campus as well, and make that a way of living and a way of being.